Horror is one of those genres that lend itself well to the television series format, whether that in anthology form or even just interjected in other shows of varying genres. And we all know the big ones, like The Walking Dead, Supernatural, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and so forth. Yet there are thousands of other great shows that deserve just as much, if not more, hype for how truly amazing and spooky they really are. Before we begin, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. At no cost to you, every new subscriber helps us achieve our goal and keeps us motivated to creating more new content. With that being said, I'm your host, Raging Antibody, and here are 10 must-see horror TV shows. Number 1. Ash vs. Evil Dead. Following on after the main Evil Dead trilogy of films, it sees Ash, now in his mid-50s, still working at S-Mart and still holding on to the Necronomicon, the Book of the Dead. Of course, in typical Ash fashion, he gets blitzed one night trying to impress a girl in a miniskirt and reads from the book, causing the demonic presences of the Necronomicon to once again awaken and enter our world. This sets off a series of adventures as he then must not only bring out his trusty chainsaw attachment and famous boomstick, but also team up with two unlikely compatriots in Kelly and Pablo. The gnarly gore and dark comedy are all here, and we meet some very interesting demons along the way, not just Deadites. Unfortunately, it only ran for 3 seasons before it was cancelled due to Starz having low viewership on their platform, and while Netflix and Max did offer to pick it up, by the time Bruce Campbell had retired from the character. Fun fact, it ends like how they originally planned to end Army of Darkness, with Ash drinking a magic potion and accidentally drinking too much, which causes him to sleep decades into the future and miss the apocalypse. However, fear not, his adventures continued in comic book form, so after binging the series, if you want to know what happens next, there are options. Number 2. The Fall of the House of Usher. Created by Mike Flanagan, any number of his series could be on this list, such as The Haunting of Hill House or Black Mass. But we wanted to give special attention to this series in particular, as it feels like classic horror, like those tales they used to do on Mystery Theater. It follows the Ushers, a pair of siblings who grew up with an overly religious mother and let disease consume her instead of seeking medicine because her belief was that God would heal her. The siblings promise each other that one day they would make something of themselves and not fall into the same pitfalls. Jump a few years into the future, and Roderick Usher is working for a pharmaceutical company and discovers a wonder drug, claiming it can cure any kind of pain and is non-addictive. His boss steals this from him essentially, and so with his sister Madeline, he plots to get his revenge and take it all back for himself. I'll try not to spoil too much here, but after a series of events, the siblings hide out in a small dive bar and meet Verna, an enchanting bartender with quite a bit of knowledge of the world. Through an intricate conversation, she offers them a deal, that they'll get everything they ever wanted and more, but there will be a price to pay one day. Not believing her, the siblings of course take the deal, and this sets the events of the show in motion. If you're a fan of Edgar Allan Poe and Gothic horror, this is a must-watch. Number 3. Channel Zero. A horror anthology series, what sets this one apart from the others is that the tales used in the show are based on creepypastas. Each season explores a different tale, following it down a dark rabbit hole into the truly disturbing and unnerving. Season 1 sees a child psychologist return to his hometown to investigate his brother's disappearance, in accordance to recent similar instances, and comes across a strange connection with a bizarre children's show called Candle Cove. Season 2 follows a young woman and her friends who visit a haunted house type of attraction, only to find themselves questioning if the horrors within are actually real. There are 4 seasons in total, and each one draws you in with compelling characters and an equally enticing mystery. Sadly, it was cancelled due to low funding and viewership on Sci-Fi. Had it been picked up by a major streaming service like Hulu or Shudder, I'm sure it would still be airing new episodes today. So definitely check this one out for yourself. Number 4. Chucky. A continuation of the Child's Play films, it takes place after the events of Cult of Chucky, where the titular killer doll has now found the ability to embody multiple dolls all over. Kind of like splitting his soul Horcrux style and making several clones of himself. Each one has its personality, of course, but they are all also kind of different, as whatever experiences they go through separately affect them and create unique new versions of the character. We even meet up with other classic characters, such as his deadly girlfriend Tiffany, who is now in the body of the actress Jennifer Tilly, and of course Andy Barclay, who still hasn't forgotten about his nemesis and isn't as docile as Chucky may think. We are treated to flashbacks prior to the Child's Play films as well, exploring Charles Lee Ray on his early days as the Lakeshore Strangler, and how he even met Tiffany, and so forth. Filled with classic dark comedy and some pretty decent kills, this show is an excellent addition to the long-running franchise. Number 5. Black Summer. Set in the same universe as Z Nation, that horror comedy zombie show by WWE Studios, better known for wrestling matches, this series, however, is much more dark and realistic. It depicts the early days of the outbreak, each episode focusing on a particular character and their story of survival until they ultimately cross paths down the road. Originally constructed as a standalone miniseries, it was given a second season which more or less carried on the storylines of certain surviving characters, while also introducing us to a few more new ones. Filled with intense moments of horror and pretty gnarly and well done special effects, if you're looking for a show that kind of inspires the same feeling you got when you first watched The Walking Dead, this show does an amicable job. You can find it streaming on Netflix. Number 6. From. An interesting mystery show. It follows a group of strangers trapped in some sort of small town within a pocket dimension. Once you cross the border, marked by a fallen tree and a murder of crows, you cannot leave. The road out just leads right back in. But that's not the only twist at work here, because when night comes, strange, undead-like creatures come whispering out of the woods and viciously tear apart anyone they come across. This is the central mystery to the show, as no one can pinpoint what the creatures are. Some appear to resemble lost loved ones, and the way they attack is like a cross between vampires, fairies, and sirens of myth. As the season progresses, a few more people traveling across the world somehow end up stuck in the town as well, and it seems like night is coming earlier and earlier each day and lasting much longer. It boasts an impressive cast, and each episode leaves off on somewhat of a cliffhanger, much like Lost used to do, so if that's your jam, then I highly recommend this series. Number 7. Creepshow. Originally conceived by Stephen King and the late George Romero, the show follows the same formula as the films, except now they have a little bit more room in telling the individual spooky tales. Directed by Greg Nicotero of Walking Dead fame, each season so far has been filled with strange and unnerving and even bloodthirsty horror offerings, touching on all the subgenres, so there's something there for everyone. Personally, my favorite is the House of the Head episode, but I'd be curious to find out from those of you who've watched this series what your favorite episode was. There are currently 4 seasons released, all available on Shudder, with a 5th season currently in the works and scheduled for release in October 2024. So if you're looking for a bunch of spooky tales to sink your teeth into, I definitely recommend you check out this series. And if you are a budding writer-director yourself, I also recommend you submitting your stories to them, as they love working with young and upcoming new talent. Number 8. The Strain. Based on the book of the same name, the series was created by Guillermo del Toro and Chuck Hogan, and follows Dr. Ephraim Goodweather, head of the New York-based CDC lab, where they are working on something called Project Canary. A plane mysteriously lands using autopilot, and on board, everyone, including the staff and passengers, are found dead. As Goodweather is brought in to investigate, they establish that what happened to the people is connected to some ancient viral strain connected to vampirism. Of course, like any good apocalyptic horror plot, the virus begins to spread, and Goodweather must assemble a team to combat and cure the plague before all of humanity is wiped out. While there's plenty of series out there that feature vampires and supernatural baddies being fought by a scrappy bunch of heroes, this show sets itself apart in two very distinct ways. First, Guillermo del Toro's brilliant storytelling style and accompanying visuals are just simply unmatched by anything else being offered at the time. Secondly, the vampires aren't what we've grown to know. They don't act like or even resemble anything we typically think of when indulging in the subgenre. The series ran for 4 seasons and ended quite perfectly, actually, and is filled with horrifying moments and spectacular creature effects and much, much more, so I highly recommend checking this series out. Number 9. The Outsider. Based on the novel of the same name written by Stephen King, it is part of a series of stories that tie into several other offerings by King, such as The Dark Tower, It, and Insomnia. While the film primarily follows Ralph Anderson, a kind of grumpy detective working in the Cherokee City Police Department, the story later sees the addition of Holly Gibney, who appears to have a savant-like memory and perceptive abilities, most definitely linked to the power often featured in King's novels called The Shine. Quite a few kids have gone missing in this small city, and a few found mutilated and half-eaten, and soon they finger a suspect for it. However, it can't be him, because he was quite literally in 2 places at once. This begins to unveil a plot of a man-like creature who can shapeshift, much like Pennywise in It. In fact, my theory is that this creature at the center of the story is one of its offspring, one of the eggs that Ben Hanscom failed to squash in the ending of that book. While watching this series, you'll find quite a few similarities between the story of these townfolk and what happened to the Losers Club in Derry. So if you're a fan of that, or King in general, I highly recommend checking this series out. You can find it streaming on Max. Number 10. The Outer Limits. Everyone knows The Twilight Zone, even if they've never actually seen a single episode. The title alone has become such an ingrained cultural term for anything weird or unexplained. However, The Outer Limits tried to compete with them by offering their own tales of strange and unusual horror, and unfortunately didn't make the same impact in the late 60s. That is, until it was rebooted in the mid-90s, among the rise of supernatural mystery shows like The X-Files, and that's when it truly hit its stride. Shot in that same moody, yet almost documentary style that made shows like Millennium such big hits, each episode took us to a place where our deepest fears became reality, and they did it with pretty decent special effects and quite a few notable actors who grew up to become A-list stars. It ran for 7 seasons from 1995 to 2002 and still holds up pretty well, and I believe you can find them all streaming on Amazon Prime, so be sure to check it out. Thanks for checking out the video. What's one of your favorite horror-themed TV series? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to tap that bell icon to stay up to date with our latest releases. You can reach out to us on Twitter or X at StudiosFat, or chat with us on Discord, linked in the description. We've recently launched our very own merch store, so be sure to check that out, also linked below. I've been your host, Raging Antibody. Thanks again, and hail to the king, baby.